Part 17. Global Copy, My Talent is Called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 161. The young assassin had completely entered a coma under this attack and lay unconscious in the pit. Even if a buff is given to her and she can be resurrected, the change from life to death and then back to death is too exciting, and not everyone can bear it. Obviously, under the fear of death, the girl subconsciously protected herself and fell into a coma. Have to say, the scenery around here is really big, and the pit is quite white. Ahem. He took out a piece of clothing from the ring and was about to put it on the ragged girl. After taking 2 steps, he suddenly stopped and looked back. Oh, I'm just alert. I originally wanted to eliminate you and that idiot woman together. A man in a trench coat slowly appeared, stroking his palms and exclaiming. He has unconventional hair, shorts, a windbreaker, sandals. This look is no different from a psychopath. Luzioki tilted her head. Who are you? You don't need to know too much, you just need to know that you are going to die soon. The man smiled strangely, taking out a claw sheath and clasping it on his hand. He ducked and appeared next to Luzioki and attacked him. Just listen to a pop sound. Soon. Luzioki slapped the man in the face, causing his face to become distorted and his body rolled 360 degrees, spinning and flying to the side. Also flying out with him were several big fangs that had been separated from their sockets. They drew a beautiful arc in the air with blood flowers and disappeared into the vast night sky. Luzioki waved her hand and said with a look of disgust, "Sorry, you are too ugly. Please don't get so close suddenly. Scared me." The man fell heavily to the ground, his eyes were filled with stars, and his heart was even more unbelievable. With his strength, even if he is an adventurer at the peak level of UXZ, he is sure to be invincible. Even if he can't beat him, he has 100 ways to escape calmly. With ghostly body skills, sinister claw skills and a few tricks, a young and immature young man like this should be able to get it right at once. How come? He spat out a mouthful of blood and looked at Luzioki, who was slowly approaching, with fear on his face. Hey, a deep sigh came from the air. I have warned you not to take it lightly, but you don't take what I said seriously. An old man with a white beard floated to the ground and stood between the two of them. He looked kind-hearted, holding a cane in one hand and holding his beard in the other. Luzioki rolled her eyes. I said, you assassins, how come you are like Calabash boys saving grandpa? Send them up one by one. Can we do it cleanly and all at once? Whitebeard chuckled, since the little friend has made a request, I won't be polite. Do it. He shouted loudly, his crutches slammed to the ground, and his invisible stance spread out to wrap everyone around. Luzioki was a very talented person and was so bold that she didn't move a muscle and allowed her attitude to coerce him. As soon as the scene changed, the surroundings seemed to have undergone earth-shaking changes, and he appeared inexplicably in a bamboo forest. The Whitebeard, the man in the trench coat, and the unconscious girl all disappeared. Huh? This is, Luzioki glanced with interest, the light in his pupils flickering. Eye of true sight, open. It's actually a scene prop made by cutting off a piece of space debris. This old guy is still a bit cool. Luzioki said to himself. Before he finished speaking, the soil on the ground suddenly rose up, and an assassin in black slashed at him with a sword. Luzioki didn't even look at it, and smacked it out with a palm. The black-clothed assassin instantly turned into countless bamboo leaves and spread out. Huh, the bamboo leaf scratched Luzioki's clothes, making a long hole. However, Luzioki has the characteristic of 100 deaths cannot be solved, and the indestructible body protection of the King Kong. The sharp bamboo leaves can't do anything to him. It only triggers the shield that comes with his flying swordsmanship, inspiring a thick barrier enveloped him. Interesting. The girl from before is joined by a wretched man and an old man. Now another man in black appears. There are already 4 moonlight-level assassins. The other party actually dispatched a division of troops to fuck me. Luzaoki looked a little serious and slowly drew out the dagger. In order to stay alive, most of his attack special effects were not turned on, and he simply relied on his high basic attributes to kill assassins on the spot. But now, he showed his cards and stopped pretending. That's right, I'm hanging it on the wall. Luzaoki slashed out with his sword, but the space was unable to withstand his astonishing destructive power, and bursts of mournful caca sounds were heard. A dark gap in the void appeared in the scene. Through the gap, Luzaoki could vaguely see the scene outside. Kaka. The old man hiding in the bamboo forest was stunned for a while. He originally wanted to take advantage of the scene and play with Luzaoki in the applause. Unexpectedly, just at the beginning, a crack appeared on his precious crutch. But before he could feel heartbroken, he shouted, "Do it quickly. Don't let him get out. If there is nothing that can be done about him in the scene with the right time, place, and people, when he goes out, won't he and others have to deliver food?" The man in the trench coat with the missing tooth took action together with the remaining assassins, using their skills to attack Luzaoki. Magic Wave Fist. Nightmare Storm. Su Tian Luiying Kill. Dream Weaving is extinguished. A huge shockwave mixed with black airflow, accompanied by various strange shadows and rays, rushed towards Luzaoki. Luzaoki made a scornful cut and swung her dagger. Forced knife vibration. All attacks that were very close to Luzaoki disappeared under Luzaoki's dagger, as if they were drained away by an invisible force. Then, the transparent dagger blade of Luzaoki shimmered like stars in the endless void. He faced many assassins with stunned faces and struck down with his sword. When Captain Zhang arrived at the scene, Luzaoki was sitting bored on the grass by the roadside. The huge pothole next to it almost cut off the entire road. A girl wearing a man's coat was tied up by the tree. She was still tilting her head, and there was a trace of suspicious crystal liquid hanging from the corner of her mouth. "You're finally here," Luzaoki complained. "You don't really have diarrhea, do you?" Captain Zhang blushed, rubbed the back of his head and laughed. "I'm sorry, I was held back. I'm sorry." He would not say that the assassin had no martial ethics and sneaked up on him, a middle-aged man who was taking a shit. "You know, I was squatting in the toilet and hadn't even put on my pants yet." Captain Zhang quickly changed the topic. "How is the situation here? Is this the only one?" He didn't quite believe it. He had spent 2 Hui-level assassins trying to hold him back, but there was only one person who was the real target. Impossible. Captain Zhang looked at the assassin with a scrutinizing gaze. Although this assassin looks decent and has a pretty figure, ahem. A bit underhanded. But simply wanting to use this to achieve the goal is too. 6, but the remaining 5 were more courageous and refused to surrender. "I killed them all," Luzaoki said lightly. "If those 5 people knew anything about it, they would definitely die in peace. Is this a question of whether to surrender or not? Is there any chance for me to surrender?" Global copy. My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 162. When the girl woke up, she found that she had been arrested and imprisoned. She was detained by the Special Forces team in a cell and stared at the middle-aged assassin from before. What they are about to face is the interrogation of the Special Forces and the related criminal liability of the Dragon Kingdom. This wave of assassinations should be regarded as being wiped out by Luzaoki. Even if there are still assassins left, they must consider their assassination actions. Of course, Luzaoki did not pay the price. He must bear 30% of the compensation for the huge pothole on the road. It can be clearly seen from the surveillance screen on the side that it was caused by his fight with the girl assassin. In fact, it was mainly him, but considering that he was the party who was assassinated, Only holding him responsible for 30% of the responsibility was considered to be lenient. It is worth mentioning that Lu Zhaoqi still has not waited for the final trial result. The bald weirdo was still missing. Because early the next morning, the escort team General Wang mentioned arrived. A team of 5 people, all Yuehui-level adventurers, could tell from their words and deeds that they had a strong military aura. They loaded Lu Zhaoqi and Lu Wanyi into the riot truck, which was already well arranged. Lu Zhaoqi originally thought that they were going to use this truck to escort the two of them to the imperial capital. I was still muttering in my heart, wondering if my sister could bear this long journey. As a result, the truck turned the corner out of the city, headed for the secret base, and finally stopped on top of a private plane. Lu Zhaoqi opened her mouth wide. She never expected that General Wang's cards would be so big. He actually arranged a special plane to pick him up and deliver him. Suddenly I felt that the risk I took to save them was worth it. As expected of a powerful golden thigh and an iron backer, Lu Wanyi was flying on a plane for the first time in her life, and she was very curious about everything on it. My sister still has a big heart. The previous assassination experience was almost over, and now my mind was filled with this new thing in front of me. I got on the plane and looked around, looking like a curious baby. Among the escorts was a female officer who looked familiar to Lu Zhaoqi. She seemed to have been with General Wang before. She is better at observing words and expressions. Seeing Lu Wanyi being so curious, she explained it to her in detail. Lu Zhaoqi was also listening. My sister is curious about why this lump of steel can fly so fast in the sky. If there is an accident ahead, can it break? In a previous life, these questions would probably have been answered by even a child of a few years old. However, although the technology in this world is relatively advanced, the popularization of relevant knowledge is very average. Even in this world, 50% of people don't know that the little broken ball under their feet is actually round. Even if someone told him or he learned about it himself through some channels, he still didn't want to believe it. My sister's knowledge was limited due to special reasons and she was unable to complete her studies. Although her thoughts have matured, she is still naive in many aspects. Lu Zhaoqi didn't find it funny. He only felt sad and had a vague idea in his heart. What his sister lost, he must make up for it twice as much. Wait, sister. I'll buy you a double copy of your homework. He didn't care much about the female officer's explanation. After all, he can fly by himself. For this kind of vehicle that carries people to the sky, it is natural. Still a little curious. But his curiosity is different from his sister's. The only thing he was curious about was, do you really throw out your defecated items after taking a rest on an airplane? Wouldn't that really free to fly? Facing Lu Zhaoqi's questions, the female officer was not so calm. The smile on her face was a little stiff, and the look she looked at Lu Zhaoqi became a little strange. How on earth is this guy's brain so fat? Can't we talk about something more normal? 2 hours later, Lu Zhaoqi and her sister landed safely at a base in the imperial capital. There are no twists, no assassinations, and no surprises. After getting off the plane, the escort took them to a reception area. Apparently everything had been arranged long ago. It was already noon, and the two of them simply browsed the city weekly and got a taste of the food and customs of the imperial capital. To be honest, Lu Zhaoqi still thinks the food in Yuzhou is better. The weather in Daijing was much drier than that in Chengdu. My sister's lips were peeled, and she started sneezing not long after getting off the plane and couldn't stop it. It seems a bit acclimatized. Lu Zhaoqi took her to see the old military doctor at the reception desk. This old military doctor obviously has some real skills. 3 times, 5 times, 5 times, 2 times, my sister's rhinitis was stopped, and she never sneezed again. Lu Wanyi was told to eat lighter food in the past few days, avoid dryness and spicy food, and just recuperate. Lu Xiaoqi bought a box of lipstick for her sister. She watched her sister apply it gently with her lips pouted, and her lips became crystal clear. Lu Xiaoqi almost left Halazi behind. Well, he had no other intention, he just wanted to taste the lipstick. His sister also saw his evil intentions, smiled and asked him to lower his head. Then apply lipstick to him as well. Although she could taste the lipstick this time, Lu Xiaoqi still felt a little regretful. The next day, they finally saw the Panlongbai that their sister had longed for. It is said to be Panlongbai, but it is actually a tall and thick city wall. This city wall is a full 18 feet high and winds for more than 20,000 kilometers. Looking at it, it looks like a divine dragon entrenched in the land of the Dragon Kingdom, firmly protecting the imperial capital and the territory behind it. Its earliest history can be traced back thousands of years. When the first emperor of the Dragon Kingdom unified the territory, he carried out large-scale construction projects and built high city walls to build a powerful defense against foreigners. Later, after successive renovations and expansions, it gradually became a landmark building of the Dragon Kingdom. Its material is made from an extremely special mixed substance, which is said to be refined from the rare stones collected by generations of emperors across the country mixed with various solid substances. The specific formula is unknown. Finally, after the dungeon arrived, it was permanently blessed by some special props obtained by Dragon Kingdom, and finally formed such a spectacular and majestic building. It will not move when hit by any attack, and even if it is slightly damaged, it will be repaired spontaneously. The most important thing is that it also has a friend or foe identification function. Once enabled, it will automatically identify the enemy and our own strength. It will be blessed, while the enemy will be suppressed. No means of sneaking, invisibility, or teleportation can cross the barrier formed by the Panlong Wall. Facing this man-made wonder, all enemies are helpless and unable to outsmart them, and are forced to attack by force. However, the strong attack could not break through its barriers, wasting its own strength in vain, and finally ended in despair. It is said that the 8-nation allied forces joined hands to invade the Dragon Kingdom and made great progress, but they were all defeated in front of this dragon wall. At that time, there were not as many moonlight experts as there are now. They specially mobilized Yuehui adventurers from various countries to form an attack team, and bombarded the Panlong Wall for 7 days and 7 nights. In the end, several strong men were exhausted to death, but the Panlong Wall did not move at all. The Dragon Kingdom soldiers above just looked at them quietly, not feeling scared at all, and even wanted to laugh a little. Instead, the Dragon Kingdom soldiers who had recharged their troops fought out in high spirits. A group of enemy troops with low morale were unable to resist. Those who were killed threw away their helmets and armor. In the end, they had no choice but to declare a truce, cede territory, pay compensation, and apologize. It was this battle that established the Dragon Kingdom's leading position in the world, acquired a large amount of resources, and finally cultivated a number of moonlight adventurers and sunlight warriors that far exceeded the number of other countries. Panlongbai is even more famous all over the world. As one of the most eye-catching features of imperial capital, the Longshao Mountain on Panlongbai has long been developed into a tourist attraction, and many people check in and take photos here. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 163. Thousands of years have not left many mottled marks on the Panlong Wall. The towering walls sparkled in the sunlight, and the texture didn't look like rock at all, but rather looked like a steel fortress. Xiaoqi, look at that sculpture. Lu Wanyi is wearing a sun hat and a youthful and beautiful dress, full of energy. She pointed at the huge dragon head on the city gate, covered her mouth and shouted softly. This dragon head is vivid, with a pair of dragon eyes shining with a faint blue light, and a calm and intimidating expression. It opens its huge mouth, revealing its ferocious fangs, as if it will pounce down at any time and bite the passengers below. People who came to play were not afraid. Instead, they stood under the city gate and took out their mobile phones to take photos with the dragon head hanging above. The reason why Longshao Mountain is called Longshao Mountain has something to do with this huge dragon head. Anyone who enters the pass through Longshao Mountain must pass the appraisal of this dragon head. If someone with treacherous intentions tries to get away with it, the blue light emitted from the dragon head's eyes will freeze it, and then the soldiers waiting on the left and right will subdue it and interrogate it. Come here, let's take a photo together. Lu Wanyi took her younger brother and stood under the city gate, took out the small camera Lu Zioki bought for her and raised it high, making a click sound. The two people's bright smiles were frozen at this moment. The two city gates seemed to be made of pure metal. The red surface shone with a brilliant halo, and there were carvings on them showing scenes of warriors going off to battle and returning victorious. Lu Wanyi stood under the city gate, clicked 2 more photos, and looked through the photos she had just taken with great interest. After passing the city gate, there is a long corridor. The corridor is so wide that even several modern tanks can drive in side by side. There were stairs leading up to the city wall on both sides of the corridor. When Lu Wanyi saw it, she insisted on dragging Lu Zioki up to have a look. When she climbed up the city wall, she discovered that there was a sightseeing elevator installed on the inside of the city wall. Lu Wanyi. Oops, my sister gasped, wiped the sweat from her forehead, and pouted again, feeling that she had been deceived. Her physique is indeed getting longer. In the past, this breath would probably kill her half alive, but now, except for the feeling of rising blood and a slight sweat on her forehead, her expression is basically the same as before, with no change. This is thanks to Lu Zioki's unremitting use of magical power to clear her sister's body veins every day. She glanced at Lu Zioki, who was covering his mouth and snickering, and couldn't help but lightly kicked his calf, saying coquettishly, "Why are you standing there? Sister is tired." With that said, Lu Wanyi opened her hands and motioned for her brother to carry her. Snort. This bad brother actually dares to laugh at her, so he needs to be punished. Lu Zioki's eyes lit up, looking at his sister's cute little expression. He didn't know what she was thinking about. But this is not punishment for Lu Zioki. This is obviously a reward. He obediently leaned down and his sister's soft body leaned on his back. She hung her chin on his shoulder and put her mouth next to Lu Zioki's ear. Drive. Lu Zioki felt her ears itching, and the feeling reached directly to the tip of her heart. He suddenly became more energetic and strode forward. His sister was carried by the inertia, her upper body leaned back, and she let out an exclamation. She hammered her brother's shoulder with her little hand. "Oh! Slow down!" "Oh!" Lu Zioki shrank her neck and didn't say anything back. She gently supported her sister and walked slowly on the steps. The breeze blew Lu Wanyi's hair and hit Lu Zioki's face. He smelled the fragrance. He couldn't help but take 2 deep breaths, but his nose was itchy and he sneezed quickly. When my sister saw this scene, she couldn't help but put her arms around his neck and giggled, "Why are you just like Haidu?" Lu Zioki didn't feel ashamed, but felt proud, and said proudly, "Every favor must have its master." My sister couldn't help laughing happily. My sister's clear laughter immediately echoed on the winding city wall, attracting many people's attention. The aisles on the city wall are wide enough to accommodate 10 carriages traveling side by side. And the road surface is very smooth, with a bulge in the middle and a slight slope on both sides. Even if it rains, there will be no accumulation of water. The rainwater will flow along the stone slabs on the ground into the water outlet in the corner, and finally flow from the water pipe into the sewer. There are many small sheds set up on both sides of the aisle, selling various drinks and food, as well as selling some gadgets, such as toys that children like, hairpins for girls, and various fans and umbrellas. Going a little further, there is a tea house where tourists can rest and cool down. It was very lively, like a busy city. Luzioki carried her sister on her back and walked a long way around the city wall. The walls were connected to each other, similar to the Great Wall, away from the downtown area, and followed her sister's instructions to climb to a high observation tower. When they arrived here, Luzioki put her sister down, and the two siblings lay on the crenel and looked at the scenery in the distance. Looking around, the vast rivers and mountains of the Dragon Kingdom come into view. The rolling mountains embedded in the horizon reflect the shining golden light under the sun, making them look extremely magnificent, like a beautiful picture. I saw clouds and mist lingering in the distance, and green mountains. Looking down at the bottom of the mountain, I saw patches of green trees, green grass, and a few flowers. All of this is wrapped up by the towering city wall, which is like a sleeping dragon, hovering above the beautiful mountains and rivers, and like a giant opening his hands to embrace all the beautiful things in the world. Wow! So beautiful, my sister couldn't help but murmured. The howling wind blew up the corners of her clothes, and her waist-length hair flew in the air. Luzioki secretly looked at her side face illuminated by the sun. Her fair and rosy face looked so flawless. Yeah. It's indeed beautiful, Luzioki seemed to agree. She is like a fairy who has fallen into the world, so beautiful that nothing can be said about her. This is the person he has been protecting. He couldn't help but open his arms to hold his sister in his arms, and buried his chin in her sister's hair. Sister, it's great to have you. My sister's heart skipped a beat, but she didn't object to her brother's frivolous behavior. She just had a blush on her face and her eyes curled up. I feel happy. They walked hand in hand on the city wall for a long time, until my sister rubbed her feet and kept complaining that she was tired, and then they found a place to get off Panlong by. Not far away, I heard someone shouting from the front, "Come and take a look. Don't miss it if you're passing by. The only Panlong wall in the entire Dragon Country is in pieces. If you miss it, you will regret it for the rest of your life." Luzioki stopped and looked up, and saw a temporary arena set up on the street in front of him. On it was placed a square stone with the same color as the Panlong wall. A young man on it held a microphone and shouted with all his strength, attracting many people to watch. "Xiaoqi, let's go and have a look too." My sister saw that her brother was interested and couldn't help but whisper. Yes, Luzioki nodded, pulling her sister into the crowd. He had magical power to protect his body, and ordinary people couldn't get close to him and his sister, so they were pushed away by a gentle force. The two came to the stage without any hindrance. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 164. The young man in the ring is only about 30 years old. He has a short beard and looks a little weathered. When he saw that the people around him were almost gathered, he began to say loudly, "Dear fellow villagers, ladies and gentlemen. I am setting up a stage here today. I am not asking for money or fame. I am just trying to restore the glory of my ancestors. I also hope that everyone will appreciate it. Come and take a look." He circled the ring with his fists clasped, then pointed at the boulder in the center of the ring and shouted, "As we all know, back then our Dragon Kingdom rebuilt the Panlong Wall, collecting rare stones from all over the world and melting them into a wall. Since 200 years ago, Taoist ancestor Zhang Jitsi used the supreme means to make the Panlong Wall seamless and indestructible. After that, there will no longer be any fragments of the Panlong stone in the world." The elder sister poked Luzioki's waist curiously and asked in a low voice, "What is he talking about?" My sister didn't know much about these things related to adventurers, so Luzioki slowly explained to her. The little brother was talking about the fact that the country had previously asked the country's only Sun Yao expert to use the means of reaching the sky to build the Panlong Wall into a supreme item. From then on, it becomes one piece and is difficult to destroy. Even if it is broken open with an extremely powerful attack, it will only take the blink of an eye. The broken parts will return to the missing parts and recover as before, as if nothing happened. More than average. It is this characteristic that makes it impossible for any adventurer below Sun Yao to do anything with it. Even if a Ryeo level powerhouse takes action, it will still take a lot of effort from the boss. So since then, there is no such thing as Panlongbai fragments, because the damaged parts will return to the original body. Because of this, he shouted about the fragments of the Panlong wall that attracted so many people to watch. But there are exceptions to everything. He changed his tone and patted the boulder with his hand. This fragment was taken out from the Panlong wall by my ancestor using Tongtian's method. As soon as the statement came out, everyone under the ring was in an uproar, booing and talking about it, and most of them were skeptical. What? Don't you believe it? The little brother chuckled. That's easy to handle. Everyone knows that Panlongbai has the following characteristics. Incomparably tough, fearless of skills, perceptive of illusions and capable of automatic repair. If you don't believe it, just go on stage and try it and you will know. As he spoke, he took out a sign and stood it in front of the ring. Of course, this doesn't mean that all your hard work has been in vain. Everyone, please read the rules. The 4 characters Stone Trial Contest are written with flying phoenixes on the signboard. The rules of the game are clearly written in red letters on a white background below the big characters. The person who takes the stage pays a deposit of 300, and can use any weapon to attack the shards of the Panlong wall 3 times. If any mark can be left on it and it is damaged, the challenger will return 10 times the amount. If not, the deposit will belong to the challenger. The rules are simple and easy to understand, and everyone will understand them at a glance. To put it bluntly, it is a different kind of gambling. It's just that most of the onlookers are ordinary people. How can they cause damage to the fragments of the Panlong wall? Even if it is a fake, even if it is an ordinary bluestone, if ordinary people try it, it will be a waste of effort. If this money is given, wouldn't it be given to the other party in vain? But they refuse to leave. After all, the only piece of Panlong wall fragment in the world was such a big gimmick, and they also wanted to know whether it was true or false. The little brother was watching the commotion in the audience, and everyone was talking about it, but no one came on stage. He didn't care, and brought out a weapons rack from the side. It was covered with cold light and weapons made of refined iron. He raised a tiger-headed knife at random and slashed at the stone he picked up from nowhere. With a choking sound, the stone split into 2, with smooth cut surfaces. Everyone, watch out! This is a sharp blade for blowing and breaking hair. As he spoke, he raised the tiger-headed knife high and pointed at the paling dragon wall fragment in the middle of the ring, saying hey. The tiger head knife fell suddenly. Kang, Gold and Stone Symphony, the tiger head knife was bounced high, and the blade was slightly curled. The fragments of the Panlong wall on the arena were unscathed, with not even a single white mark appearing. The little brother turned the knife head and clasped his fists with both hands. Is there any brave man who dares to come up and give it a try? Those who don't have weapons can borrow the weapons on my weapon rack. I guarantee that each one is a top quality weapon. After a slight pause, he deliberately shouted, for the first 10 warriors who are willing to try, I will not charge you a deposit. But if you lose, please shout out the name of my ancestor Liu Yuchang and say a mighty and domineering one can. The people in the audience heard this. Try it for free? That's great. If I go to Taiwan bang bang 3 times, doesn't it mean that I have spent 300 prostitutes in vain? This feeling is good. Even if I'm stuck today, I have to rub myself against your stone. I'll do it. A strong man raised his hand first, expressing his willingness to try. The little brother's eyes lit up and he shouted enthusiastically, okay. The first warrior has appeared. Please give way to this warrior. The crowd reluctantly moved out of the way, allowing the sweaty warrior to squeeze in. When we got to the stage, I wanted to say a few more words. Are the rules clear? Do you want me to tell you again? The warrior waved his hand directly, stopping. Let's get started. As he spoke, he took off his coat, revealing the vest underneath and his solid muscles. It looked like he was well prepared. He picked up a mace and weighed it in his hand. He seemed satisfied with the weight of the weapon. So he walked to the fragments of the panlong wall and shouted, 1, 2, 3, get up. The mace in his hand drew a beautiful arc and hit the stone hard. There was a clang, sparks flew everywhere, and the mace was bounced high, but the stone remained the same without any change. The strong man didn't believe in evil, so he hit it twice more. He originally wanted to hit it a fourth time, but he was stopped by the younger brother. Hey! We have agreed that everyone only has 3 chances. If you still want to smash it, you have to pay for it. When the strong man heard this, he thought it was better to forget it. He is just an ordinary person. Although he is relatively strong, there is no need to fight against something that even adventurers may not be able to handle. He shook his head, put down the weapon in his hand, and walked off the stage angrily. The little brother quickly shouted, "Don't forget our conditions." The expression on the strong man's face was stagnant, but he was also an upright person and was willing to admit defeat. He shouted, "Luya is mighty and domineering." After saying that, he walked off the stage dejectedly amid the laughter of everyone. Is there anyone else willing to come up and try? I'll do it. One of the young men raised his hand. Luzaoki took a look and could tell by his aura that the young man had peak star level strength. He brought a long knife to the stage himself. Luzaoki's eyes flashed, and he used the eye of true knowledge to easily tell that the weapon in his hand was a sophisticated piece of equipment. Naturally, his attributes are not comparable to those of Luzaoki, but for most ordinary people, they are pretty good. He used a power charging skill to accumulate enough power and then slashed hard on the stone with his sword. As a result, the light of the skill hit the stone and automatically dissipated, leaving only a crisp sound caused by the collision between the weapon and the stone. Global copy. My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 165. With Luzaoki's eyesight opened eye of true knowledge, he could naturally see the scene clearly. Even the deformation caused by the collision between the blade and the stone surface can be clearly seen. The anti-magic effect of this stone is completely different from that of the forbidden magic stone. The forbidden magic stone dispels the skills that have already been formed, breaking its original structure and making it ineffective. This stone is more like denying the existence of the skill itself. The effect of ignoring skills is achieved according to the rules. What's even more strange is that Luzaoki's strength with the eye of true knowledge can't see through the details of this stone. When I glanced up, I saw rows of children's question marks hanging on the rocks. It seems to prove that it is not simple. You can't even see through the appraisal skills. To be honest, Luzaoki already believed that these were fragments from the panlong wall. Even if not, it is still an excellent and rare material. Several people came up one after another to test it, but the final result was nothing more than shouting Luya Chang is mighty and domineering, and then got off the ring in despair. The young man stood on the stage with his hands on his hips, a smug look on his face, and kept repeating, "Is there anyone next?" A unique opportunity to experience the power of the panlong wall. You're just passing by, don't miss the opportunity. Soon, all 10 places were consumed. Everyone in the audience hesitated. Because if you go up any further, you will have to spend money. Although 300 yuan is not much, even an ordinary family can afford it, let alone an adventurer. But for such an uncertain thing, wouldn't it mean giving money to the other party in vain? At this time, the importance of childcare is reflected. I saw a man raising his hand and saying, "Let me come." The young man on the stage smiled and said, Then please invite this warrior to the stage. The man walked up to the stage in a carefree manner and said with a smile, even if I can't break this stone, I can still see this wonderful thing, and my 300 yuan is not a loss. As he spoke, he took out his weapon and prepared to attack. Lu Zhaoqi looked at his level and found that he was probably in the early stage of Yuehui, where he could compete with Sister Yan. What he held in his hand was a broadsword. Looking at its power and attributes, it could be considered a rare weapon. Hey, he shouted, purple lightning flashed, and a thunderbolt hit the fragments of the panlong wall. With a clang sound, the broad knife bounced high without any surprise. The man rubbed his hands and praised, it is indeed a panlong bai. Even if it is fake, it is probably not much different. He then attacked twice, but naturally he couldn't do anything to the dragon wall. So he happily accepted the bet, left 300 yuan, and Shi Shiren walked off the stage. Although this man is quite suspected of being a shill. But after this experience, some people are really willing to pay to experience it. There are even people who ask for money to go up there, touch them and take photos. If you don't touch the freestones in Longshao Mountain, but you can pay here to experience it, it's a clear idea. Lu Zhaoqi took a strange look and was already content and ready to leave with her sister. As a result, Diji's thoughts came to her mind. There is something fishy in this stone, I want it. Lu Zhaoqi was stunned for a moment. You must know that since this girl settled in Lu Zhaoqi's danshan, she only knows how to eat and then sleep, and then eat after sleeping. The only function is to help Lu Zhaoqi refine his magic power. He had helped Lu Zhaoqi study the cultivation of immortals before, but he seemed to have figured out something later and showed no interest in Lu Zhaoqi's cultivation. You will make an exception today and be interested in a stone? This made Lu Zhaoqi murmur in her heart. Could it be that this stone is really some kind of treasure? So, this panlong wall fragment is fake? He asked without any hesitation. Ji Lan was also sincere, probably expecting Lu Zhaoqi to do something, so she answered honestly. This stone is just ordinary, but there is a rare treasure hidden inside. It is precisely because of the existence of this treasure that the stone becomes strange. Go up and break it into pieces, take out the treasure and give it to me. Is this your attitude when asking for help? Little Digi actually dares to speak to me, Mr. Lu, in such a commanding tone? Big courage. Who gave you the courage? Lu Zhaoqi immediately said that the baby was unhappy and the baby would not go. Digi. After a moment of silence, her attitude softened, this thing is also good for you, if what I expected is true. It should help you with your next step of practice. Does someone in my land need to rely on these external objects? Joke. You are clearly looking down on me, Father Tiandeo. Lu Zhaoqi was unmoved and even put forward a condition, you act like a baby, and I will find a way to get it for you, otherwise there is no need to discuss it. When Lu Zhaoqi conveyed these words to Ji Lan, she glanced at her sister with a guilty conscience. Lu Wanyi was watching the people on the stage splitting stones with great interest, almost applauding. As an ordinary person, she couldn't see anything mysterious, but she thought the light and shadow special effects were pretty good and very cool. Many people in the audience had the same opinion as her. As an ordinary person, I can't see why I am joining in the fun at this moment. I am just enjoying the performance. When Diji heard what Lu Zhaoqi said, she suddenly fell silent. Talk about coquettishness. It's not that she has never done it before, but she has long forgotten about it in her long life. Mentioning this word made her miss the feeling of being with her relatives when she was a child. But being coquettish to Lu Zhaoqi and being coquettish to one's elders are two different things. Isn't it more uncomfortable to act coquettishly in front of this bitch a little pervert than to kill her? But this treasure is indeed very important to her now. Without it, my half-dead state might have continued for a long time. Seeing that Diji was silent, Lu Zhaoqi also knew that he might be joking. Still too hasty. With Digi's arrogant personality, it was good that she didn't have a life and death fight with Luzaoki at this moment. Luzaoki touched her nose and said quickly, "Okay, okay, I'm just kidding you." However, he emphasized one point in the end: "Don't speak to me in that commanding tone in the future. I don't like it." After a while, Digi gently responded, "Yes." Both sides took a step back and reluctantly reached a consensus. I happened to meet the uncle on the stage who failed to cut the stone and walked off the stage with an angry look on his face. He is already the being with the highest cultivation level among this group of people, reaching the middle stage of moonlight. You know, among the people watching the fun, the only one with Yuhui level of strength, apart from this person and the person who was suspected of being entrusted before, is Luzaoki. Is there any next warrior who dares to challenge? Is there any more? Let me try. Luzaoki raised her hand and said with a smile. The little brother also has the strength of the peak level of starlight. He glanced over and found that Luzaoki's aura could not be seen through. He felt like an ordinary person. Looking at him, he is fair and clean, with a childish face, and a pair of big eyes that seem to reveal a trace of innocence. He does not look like a UXZ level strongman at all, but rather like a newbie who doesn't understand anything. It seems that he is not a master of pretending to be a pig and eating the tiger. What's more, even if it's Yuhui level, there's nothing he can do about this precious stone. This is the result that he has confirmed after thousands of experiments. So he felt relieved, with a bit of contempt in his eyes, but still said with a smile, "Okay. Then invite this young warrior to come on stage to challenge." Luzaoki whispered a few instructions to her sister, then jumped onto the ring with a slight jump. He smiled and said, "You're betting 303 times, right? But I feel like I can't use it 3 times, otherwise. Can you give me 100 yuan first? I'll give you one shot and that's enough." The little brother is a little confused. Is there such an operation? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 166. The little brother laughed awkwardly. "Brother, there is no such rule in our rules." "What? You won't even give me 100 yuan? Okay then." Luzaoki nodded regretfully, and then said seriously, "Then I have to fight 3 times, is that okay?" "No problem." The little brother patted his chest and promised, "I will definitely let you hit me 3 times. If you don't hit me enough, I will stand here and let you hit me." Finally, he thought about it and felt that there was a loophole, so he couldn't help but add, "Unless you don't want to fight." "Okay. This is what you said. It must be counted." Luzaoki obediently took out the money, then pointed at the stone with a smirk on his face. The younger brother didn't pay attention to his emphatic tone, and seemed to be quite confident about this stone. Instead, when he saw Luzaoki was about to attack with bare hands, he did not forget to give a kind reminder: "You can use weapons. You'd better choose a weapon. If not, I can provide it here." "No need." Luzaoki shook her head, pointed her sword into shape, and lightly tapped the stone. Then she turned to her brother and said, "Okay, it's done." The little brother was stunned. Is this guy here to give me money? Don't you even want to act? I didn't ask you to be my trustee either. The audience below also talked a lot and were dissatisfied with Luzaoki's perfunctory performance. Just when everyone was in an uproar, they heard a click from the stone behind them, and fell apart in front of everyone, shattering to pieces on the ground. Everyone. The little brother's eyes widened and his mouth opened wide. His jaw dropped at this scene. Only Lu Wanyi in the audience felt that her younger brother was awesome and could do things that others couldn't do easily, so she cheered happily. Luzaoki on the stage smiled and said nothing. Joke. I'm going to fight you with all my firepower and nearly infinite destructive power. Even if it's a real panlong wall, I won't dare to hit it 3 times. It's not restored. It seems to be a fake. Luzioki shook her head pretending not to know. In fact, it was already broken when the stone cracked. Because the color on the surface of the stone is obviously inconsistent with the color inside. It's paint. The little brother used paint to change the original color of the stone. But Luzioki pretended not to see it, and said to the younger brother with a regretful look on his face, "Look, I only hit him once, what should I do with the remaining 2? Gudong." The younger brother swallowed hard and looked at Luzioki with a stiff face. There was sweat on his head and he was a little at a loss for the moment. Everyone in the audience was talking a lot, all discussing the shocking scene just now. The little brother sneered and said to Luzioki in a low voice, "Little brother, no, the young hero is very capable. You think, why don't you be so arrogant and let us go? How about we pay back 100 times your deposit? 100 times 300 is 30,000, which is no longer a small sum. Even if it is placed on an ordinary adventurer, this number can already make people feel a little heartache." As soon as he said this, the people close to the ring heard clearly and immediately booed. But he remained unmoved. What does shame mean? He has come out to perform on stage and defrauded people of their money. Why does he still care about this little face? But at this moment, he felt regretful in his heart. You must know that he has been here in the ring for not only a year and a half but also 4 or 5 months. The money he made by cheating through the stone testing competition was much more than what he gained from downloading the dungeon. The most important thing is that it is very safe, unlike placing a bet with your life like playing a dungeon. But after hunting geese all day long, the geese pecked me in the eye. This is the first time he has seen someone who can really break this precious stone. The first time and the last time. Luzioki just clicked lightly. He had been shouting for so long today, and all the money he had earned, crossed out, cheated, had gone into it. It was not even enough, so he was asked to pay back. And the props that will be used to make money in the future are gone. This can no longer be used to describe his feelings at this moment by losing his wife and losing his troops. This is simply a waste of money and a handful of rice. But that's not the hardest part. The key is that this little brother is still gearing up as if I haven't had enough fun yet. You know, he just promised that if he didn't beat him 3 times, he would stand here and let Luzioki beat him. The stone, which could not even touch the peak of moonlight, was no better than an egg in Luzioki's hands. Let Luzioki hit him twice? Wouldn't that mean that he was so stunned on the spot? Luzioki saw the timid look on his face and didn't want to embarrass him. She pointed at the stone fragments on the ground and said, "I want this, forget those 2 punches, and I don't want the deposit. Just treat it as my money, it must have been bought." The younger brother looked at the gravel on the ground with a pity expression, knowing that his previous means of livelihood was completely gone, but he had nothing to do at this time. After all, the dog's life is at stake. He nodded in agreement. Luzioki packed her things into the storage ring with a big wave of her hand. Finally, she patted her brother on the shoulder and said in an old-fashioned way, "Just find a class and come out to cheat." The younger brother had a depressed expression on his face. Looking at Luzioki's caring expression, he could only nod his head, then turned around and bowed and apologized to the audience who were still watching the excitement. Many people who felt they had been cheated had clamored for refunds from him. The scene suddenly became chaotic. But all this has nothing to do with Luzioki. He jumped off the ring, pulled his sister, and said with a smile, "Let's go." My sister nodded. The 2 of them easily squeezed out of the crowd with the help of Luzioki's magic protection. Luzioki took her sister for a walk around the surrounding scenic spots and ate some famous local delicacies, and had a great time. It was late at night before returning to the reception area. My sister played for a whole day. She was very excited while playing and didn't feel tired at all. When it came time to take a break, as soon as she stopped, her eyelids started to fight. Finally, he lay on Luzioki's shoulder and fell asleep, accompanied by slight snoring. Luzioki moved gently, helped her sister into the room, took off her coat, put her on the bed and covered her with bedding. He looked at his sister's sleeping face, the curved eyelashes, the slightly raised lips, and the slightly fluttering of her nose when she breathed. That cute look made him couldn't help but kiss his sister gently on her forehead. Before turning off the light, he looked back at his sister and turned to leave. Arrived at his room. As soon as he closed the door, Digi couldn't wait to get out of his body. Staring at him with a pair of big bright eyes, he blinked and said nothing. He thought the expectant expression was a bit funny, and deliberately teased her, "Why are you out here? Aren't you afraid of being discovered? I have already sensed it." "There is no surveillance nearby," Ge Lan said, stretching out her little hand in front of Luzioki, "Bring it here." She is only about a foot tall now, not much bigger than a newborn baby. Her chubby little face is very cute, and it is not an exaggeration to say she has tiny hands. Luzioki then teased her, "What are you getting? What do you think?" Digi was speechless and looked at him quietly. "If you want it, just talk." "How will I know you want it if you don't tell me? Although you look at me sincerely, you still have to tell me what you want. Do you really want it? You don't really want it, do you? Do you really want it? Ouch." Luzioki didn't say anything, but Digi, who couldn't bear it anymore, hit his nose with a headbutt, causing him to let out a scream. This level cannot be considered as mutual harm, so it will not trigger the restrictions of the contract. Digi gave up her body in order to escape, and only had part of her soul power. Now, after having sex with Luzioki for so long, and with her own practice, she has condensed part of her body into essence. She is indeed a nightmare-level super boss. Luzioki paid for her naughtiness, her nose felt sore, and with tears streaming down her face, she took out the pile of stones that were crushed to pieces by his finger. Digi put her hands on her hips and glanced at him. Snored. "Wouldn't it be over already?" Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 167. Luzioki watched Digi wave his little hand, and an invisible force rolled up the gravel in his hand in mid-air. Pale and gloomy flames appeared out of thin air, burning the gravel faintly. In order to make the gravel resemble the color of Panlong wall, the special paint that the liar applied on it continued to peel off under the baking process. Stone chips fell one after another, and the stones floating in the air became smaller and smaller. Digi's face was solemn and she shouted, "Help me!" "How can I help?" Luzioki looked confused. "Instill your magic power into me." Ian's body became slightly more transparent than before. Hearing this, Luzioki put her hand on Ian's back and poured pure mana into her continuously. With the blessing of Luzioki's surging magic power, her spirit was slightly lifted, and the pale spirit flames were filled with a trace of blue light. The gravel began to slowly change color under the burning of the spiritual flames, and its size also quickly shrank. In the blink of an eye, it shrank from a pile the size of a basin to only the size of a fist. The color also changes from gray-black to red. But this is not enough. Ge Lan looked cautious, said hey and took the initiative to absorb Luzioki's mana. Luzioki felt that the power in her body was pouring into Digi's body like a valve had been opened. However, the attributes of his brush were too abnormal, and his recovery ability had already broken through the sky, power of the four poles, water form. This little consumption was like a sprinkling of water to him, and he recovered in just one breath. He even began to worry about whether he would stretch her out. The power of the spiritual flames skyrocketed, and the flame seedlings shot up high, but surprisingly it did not affect anything around it, as if all its power was concentrated on the refining gravel. It can also be seen here how exquisitely Digi controls her own power. Even the energy of this strange fire can be controlled and bound at will. As the spirit flames changed, the gravel also changed from solid to liquid, the volume continued to shrink, and the light began to slowly change from red to red. First it turns orange, then turns to navy blue and then deepens into indigo. Finally, it turned into a dazzling black color that seemed to wrap around the entire universe of stars. Sure enough, it turned into colorful black. At this point, Digi finally breathed a sigh of relief and slowly lowered the spirit flame. The originally liquid fluid began to gradually solidify into a solid state. Looking at the undulating stones held up by invisible forces in the air, she gave a rare smile. Sure enough. I expected it to be good. After saying this, the spirit flames completely dissipated. A strange stone the size of her pinky finger fell into her palm. She looked at this thing with burning eyes. Luzioki also came over curiously. What on earth is this? Digi glanced at him, and in a good mood she took the rare opportunity to explain to Luzioki. This is a myth that has always been circulating in our world. When the universe first opened, the first batch of gods were born. They were loved by heaven and earth and were born with the power of laws. Each god represents the ability to practice this law to the extreme. The gods who represent the law of water and the gods who represent the law of fire dislike each other for various reasons, and finally started fighting at the end of the world, on the edge of the legendary spine that supports the heaven and earth. The powerful destructive force shattered the spine supporting the heaven and earth, and a catastrophe occurred. A big hole was opened in the sky, and the power of the outer universe invaded through this big hole. For a moment, all life was devastated, and the whole country was devastated. Later, a benevolent goddess sacrificed her own strength and filled the big hole with her supreme power, thus avoiding the destruction of the world. At this point, she sighed, "It's a pity that we couldn't hold on in the end." Luzioki heard this. "What? I'm familiar with this. Isn't it the story of Noah patching up the sky? Why does your world also have this fairy tale? Then this stone. Isn't he from the same background as Brother Monkey?" His eyes lit up, he pointed at the stone and said, "Is this the stone left by the goddess to patch the sky?" "No," Digi shook her head, "this is the fragment of the spine of the world. But this should not be a product of our world, but a similar item produced by your world. We call it the five-color sacred stone over there. It has the function of resisting strange forces, and it is extremely strong, which is of great benefit to the soul. That's why skills have no effect on it. Because it is the shield bred by this world to resist external aggressive forces. This skill itself is a manifestation of the power of another world, so it has no effect on it." As she spoke, there was a sad look in her eyes. "It's a pity that this five-color sacred stone has been eroded." Luzioki felt a little confused after hearing this. "I probably understand the meaning. This stone should be a concrete object that is a means of resisting the invasion of the outside world. The copy is a sign of the outside world invading the world, and the power, skills, brought by the copy will be instinctively rejected by this stone. Only. What's going on with this being eroded?" Ge Lan saw Luzioki's confusion, and she said calmly, "You can tell at a glance using your detection skills." Luzioki followed the instructions and used the eye of true knowledge. Only then did I realize that it might be because of Gean's refining, or because her introduction made Luzioki understand this thing. He can now actually see part of the information about this strange stone. Five-color divine stone. Attacks with less than 500,000 destructive power cannot damage it. Ignore all skill damage and limiting effects. After wearing it, the soul will be permanently strengthened by add 5,000, abnormal resistance add 3,000, and cultivation speed add 300%. Dash. 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 Luzioki. What a magical thing this is. This was the first time Luzioki saw an item with 6 attributes. Although there are 3 attributes that are still invisible as question marks, the 3 attributes above alone are very impressive. You know, this stuff is made of materials. It hasn't been processed into props or equipment yet. This already has 6 attributes. If you could use it to build a piece of equipment, wouldn't it be? But when he thought of this, he was startled. Entry. Can you see the entry for this thing? He turned back to look at Ge Lan in disbelief. Digi nodded, yes, it's what you think. Luzioki's heart suddenly went cold. What does this equate to? You installed a firewall on your computer, but it turned out that there was a virus in the firewall. It seems that the situation in this world is really worrying. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 168. However, it is too early for Luzioki to think about these. After all, although his BT level is 9 stars, he is not strong enough to change the situation of the entire world. He can only develop silently, first use the power of the copy to accelerate his own growth, and finally resist the invasion of the copy. This is called treating others with their own medicine. He took a long breath, with a slightly complicated mood. He looked at Digi and couldn't help but ask, how do you use this thing? Wear it? Ge Lan shook his head, no, it's refining. Merge it with your own soul, and you will naturally possess its full power. When the time comes to understand the rules, it will be easy to enter the next realm. At this point, she looked at the colorful black stone with some regret. It's a pity that this quantity is a bit small. It's only enough for one person. You can use it first. In my current situation. She smiled self-deprecatingly, it seems to be just like that after using it. Why not speed up your growth first? At least there is hope that before this world is completely destroyed, we can grow too. She said nothing. It seemed a bit too early to say this now. After all, Luzioki was still far away from the highest realm. Saying it now will only put more pressure on him. Luzioki also heard her underlying meaning, but he just smiled slightly. Snort. Who are you looking down on? I'm a cheat player. Then he took out the stone in Digi's hand and put it into the parcel column. Then under Digi's disbelieving gaze, he directly took out a handful of 5-color sacred stones. The shape, color, and size are exactly the same as the previous one. Here. Don't grab it, one person has one, and everyone has a share. Ge's CPU was almost fried by his incredible move. Although she had followed him for so long and knew that he had a very weird secret, she still couldn't help but widen her big Kazilan eyes when she saw the scene in front of her. What kind of outrageous operation is this? Create something out of thin air? Can a divine item of this level be made? This guy. What is the origin? She stared at Luzioki blankly, her thoughts racing around her, and she was at a loss. Call Luzioki weak, but he can easily accomplish things that are difficult for others to accomplish. Such as resurrection, and such as this hand creation. But do you think he is strong? To be honest, Digi at her peak could press Luzioki to the ground and rub her. Yes, it refers to the current Luzioki. Despite his high attack power and thick blood, his defense is not low, and his self-protection capabilities are ridiculous. Up, down, left, and right. Baba added 100 lives. But who is Digi? Converting her previous realm to this world, she was at the peak of Sun Yao, only half a step away from breaking through Sun Yao and entering the next stage. At her level, playing with the rules is no longer an option. Even in her hands, Luzioki is just a rough toy. Blurred. I can't figure it out. Digi shook her head and stopped worrying about this. Anyway, the stronger and weirder Luzioki is, the better it is for her. Their current relationship can best be described as a grasshopper on a string. Although it doesn't sound good, it is very appropriate. The equality contract is not just as simple as placing the two people in equal positions. Their lives, some of their strengths, and even some of their attributes are all linked together. Otherwise, why could Digi easily enter Luzioki's danshin and hold his Jindanksuan? It is because she is now only left with the remains of her soul and her state is too depressed, so her role cannot be reflected. When she recovered, Luzioki borrowed her power, even if it was still only at the golden elixir level. Killing Riyao was just like fun. Hey, why are you thinking so much? It's better to seize the time to recover. Digi shook her head, her expression calmed down, and she finally regained some of her former demeanor. Luzioki saw her holding an armful of 5-color sacred stones and about to drill them into her danshin, and said thoughtfully, "Is this enough for you?" "You don't have enough to tell me, I have more than enough. There's nothing else, just highlight one word." So arrogant. Ji Lan staggered when she heard the words in mid-air. Without saying a word, she silently disappeared into Luzioki's body. With the blessing of her wonderful power, the 5-color sacred stone, which was obviously a real thing, effortlessly passed through Luzioki's clothes and entered his body. I have to say, there is really nothing scientific about this fantasy novel. A few more days passed. Luzioki has been focusing on traveling with her sister recently, enjoying the beautiful scenery of the imperial capital and tasting local specialties. Spending money is like running water. But he didn't care at all. Money was just a bunch of numbers to him now, as long as his sister was happy. He has no interest in money. Taking advantage of a few days, he also went to Takeo University, but not to report in advance, but to take the opportunity to buy a small apartment near the school. After all, he and his sister are going to live here for 3 years, and they can't live without a house. I have to say that the houses here are indeed expensive. Even for schools outside the Fifth Ring Road, the houses next to them are more than 5 times more expensive than in Chengdu. Luzioki just wanted to sing, "Ah! 5 ring. You have one more ring than the 4th ring." But when he thought that the house here was only a few hundred meters away from the school, and he could come back to see his sister anytime he wanted, he finally gritted his teeth and bought it. It is worth mentioning that an interesting thing happened on the day I bought the house. He and his sister had just viewed the house and were on their way home. A man riding a motorcycle roared past, not far in front of Luzioki, and snatched away the bag held by the woman in front of him. Damn it! Speedy car grab. Luzioki was shocked. He had only heard of this kind of plot. Unexpectedly, it actually happened to him. Didn't you say that the security in Imperial Capital is very good? There are omnipresent and omniscient Zhejiang people, but there are still people who dare to take risks. Ah, the woman who was robbed was also stunned. It wasn't until the man walked away that she seemed to react and let out a harsh scream. Xiaoqi, my sister looked at the woman who was robbed and shouted involuntarily. Luzioki understood what her sister meant and knew that she sympathized with the frightened girl, but she was worried that asking her brother to help would cause him trouble, so she asked tentatively. He smiled and whispered, "Don't worry, that person is just an ordinary person, I will go and get it back for her." As he said that, he let go of his golden elixir level speed, and in the blink of an eye he caught up with the motorcycle gang speeding ahead, grabbed him off the speeding motorcycle, and conveniently took his crime tool, refers to the motorcycle, is included in the storage ring. Then he carried the frightened robber back to his sister. The elder sister was still comforting the woman, but without saying a few words, she saw Luzioki coming back with a bag in hand with a smile on her face. The man wearing the helmet was thrown to the ground and did not dare to move. The woman took the bag and looked at the two of them with gratitude. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Luzioki waved her hands. "It's okay. It's all trivial." As a result, Before she finished speaking, the woman turned around and threw the bag she had just lost into the trash can nearby. After finishing the work, he didn't forget to clap his hands and say thank you to Luzioki. Thank you so much, thank you. Luzioki. Emotions, people robbed you of a garbage bag. Then why are you shouting? The robber lying on the ground also looked unhappy. It didn't matter if he was caught, but it was still because he was robbing garbage. Blood loss. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 169. Happy time always passes very quickly. It's the back-to-school season in a blink of an eye. People were coming and going at the entrance of Takeo University. They were all freshmen who had come to register for school. Everyone was smiling and in high spirits. After all, Takeo University's reputation is one of the best among adventurer schools in the world. Those who can get into Kyoto University are the proud ones of heaven. A well-deserved trendsetter in the age of adventurers. If an ordinary family could produce an adventurer who was admitted to Kyoto University, the smoke would be emitted from the ancestral graves. This person would be able to brag for 3 generations. Luzioki and her sister were naturally among the crowd. Originally, Luzioki meant that he didn't need his sister to come, and he could handle these things alone. But she couldn't stand up to her stubborn sister. Growing up, every time Luzioki registered for school, no matter how bad her sister's health was, she would go and register for Luzioki in person. Now that her health has fully recovered, how could she miss such an important moment? The two of them lined up and came to the registration office. The teacher at the registration office was a middle-aged uncle, dressed very formally, and seemed to want to leave a good impression on the new students who came to register. He was typing quickly on the computer, registering students' information. Just after finishing the last one, he looked up and saw the 2 siblings standing in front of him hand in hand, and he was stunned for a moment. Needless to say, Luzioki was a young man at first, and his sister was only 3 years older than him. Because Luzioki did not hesitate to spend his own cultivation to nurse his sister back, he looked very young and beautiful at this time. For a while, the teacher couldn't tell who was the student and who was the parent. It can't be both, right? Hello. Which classmate is here to register? He asked politely. He's my brother, the elder sister puffed up her chest proudly, took out the admission notice with Luzioki's face and handed it to the middle-aged man. The teacher at the registration office didn't care at first, but when he picked up the admission notice and looked at it, his eyes suddenly changed. As the registration teacher who registered information, he naturally knew all the famous freshmen in advance. The name Luzioki can be described as thunderous and famous. The only top scorer in the college entrance examination with perfect scores in the liberal arts and martial arts exams in the country. How could it not sound familiar to him? Some time ago, in order to compete for this top pick, various prestigious schools almost knocked their brains out. Fortunately, Takeo University was superior and directly dispatched its capable general, Professor Wang, to capture it with the strength of Sun Yao's strong men. The school leaders have been bragging about this matter for a long time. He stood up immediately, with a smile on his face, and his voice became gentle, and said to Luzioki, "Student Lu. Welcome to Taijing University. Please come in." My sister was also confused by his appearance and asked blankly, "Isn't the registration completed yet?" "Oh. The leader has made arrangements a long time ago and has asked me to wait for Mr. Lu's arrival again. Just come with me." After saying that, he turned around and gave a few instructions to another slightly younger teacher, and personally led the 2 siblings into the school. It can be seen that this elite teacher who has been polished by society for a long time has quite good eloquence. Observing people's words and emotions along the way, he kept introducing the culture and history of Tokyo University to the two of them. The history of this school is very long, and it can basically be traced back to 300 years ago, when the replica first arrived. It was not a college at first, but a research institute, dedicated to researching information related to copies. It later developed into the first adventurer academy in the history of Dragon Kingdom. Many assessment standards and systems are formulated by Tokyo University professors. Tokyo University has experienced many expansions, from its original area of 800 acres to more than 50,000 acres. In this imperial capital where every inch of land is at a premium, being able to obtain the right to use such a large area shows how much the country attaches great importance to the school. Since the teachers and students at the school are all adventurers, this distance is not a problem for them, but if they were ordinary people, going from the dormitory to the classroom for class, if he doesn't eat breakfast, he will almost faint because of his physical condition. However, the school has also considered that in addition to teachers and students, there are also many employees who are ordinary people. The school has free school buses and sightseeing buses for the use of ordinary employees and outsiders. This middle-aged uncle was very discerning and could tell at a glance that his sister had an average physique and was probably an ordinary person, so he took the two of them on a sightseeing bus and enjoyed the scenery on campus along the way. He also introduced the various places on campus to them. Architecture. What teaching buildings, laboratory buildings, libraries, scientific research buildings, sports halls, competition halls. They didn't stop until they reached the purpose of their trip, the administration building. The administrative building is also built very elegantly. Luzioki really doesn't know much about architecture. Anyway, it seems that it can only be described in two words. Pretty. After entering the administration building, the three of them took the elevator directly to the third floor. When they arrived at an office, the teacher who was chattering all the way suddenly quieted down, straightened his clothes, and knocked on the door respectfully. "Dean Wang, the distinguished guest you invited has arrived." "Dean Wang?" Luzioki and her sister looked at each other and saw a little surprise in each other's expressions. "Please, just sign up, you won't have to go through the dean's process, right? Let me explain it here. The highest leader of an adventurer college is the principal. There are usually multiple principals, one principal and two deputy, or even more. Below the principal are the deans in charge of different departments, and then the department heads." "Please come in," a female voice called out. Luzioki only felt that it sounded vaguely familiar. The middle-aged uncle pushed the door open and made an invite gesture, gesturing for the two of them to come in. The decoration inside can be said to be very luxurious, with carved beams and painted pillars, magnificent. The carpet was even laid directly to the entrance hall, and it was soft when you stepped on it. Luzioki was still debating whether to change his shoes or not, but as soon as a figure flashed, he felt the fragrant wind blowing into his nostrils, and his sister beside him was taken away. "Wow! Little Wanyi! I miss you so much. Come on, give me a kiss, Mua." Luzioki looked at the two beauties making love with her black hair, and put her hands on her hips with a bit of disgust. "Hey! Why are you so fat? How old are you? Can you be as mature and stable as me?" The person coming is none other than Wang Yanran. She helped Lu Wanyi treat her in Chengdu for a period of time. After getting along for such a long time, it was obvious that she and her sister had established a deep friendship. "First of all, it's because my sister is soft on the outside but strong on the inside, and her body is weak, so everyone who sees her will feel a bit of pity for her. The second is that the friendship between these women is really unreasonable. Maybe if a certain sentence or two resonates, they can quickly unite the front and become a family. Although Wang Yanran is a strong person, but her true age is indeed a mystery. But the thought that she and Zhao Sueking could become good friends who talked about everything, showed her age in her heart. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 170. Huh. Take care of me. Wang Yanran made a slightly expression at Lu Zhaoqi, and said with a bad smile, Xiao Wanyi, I haven't seen you for so long, let my sister come and check your body. As she spoke, her little hands began to wander around her sister's body dishonestly. Ah! No! Sister Yanran, Lu Wanyi fell into the clutches of the devil and was unable to resist, so she could only let others control her. Eh? Why do you feel like you are a little bigger than before? Wang Yanran gestured on her chest in surprise. My sister's face turned red immediately. Hey! That's enough. Lu Zhaoqi looked at the two of them fighting, her eyes widened, and she had an envious, crossed out, angry, expression on her face. This person, actually in front of me. Not even me. Hard. The fist is hard. What's wrong? Wang Yanran let go of the shy Lu Wanyi, put her hands on her hips, and glared at Lu Zhaoqi confidently, as a doctor, I want to care about the physical condition of my patients. Is there any problem? Is there anyone who cares about the patient's health like you? Lu Zhaoqi gestured, indicating that Wang Yanran's hands were not very regular just now. They are all girls, what are you afraid of? Wang Yanran snorted. It's you. A benevolent person sees kindness, a lewd person sees a lewd person. What did you think about just now? Tell yourself. Lu Zhaoqi was speechless for a moment, and quickly said, nonsense. It's obviously you who is bullying my sister, I can't stand it anymore. Besides, Dean Wang, can you put caring for patients after the serious business? Lu Zhaoqi said seriously, can we complete the admission procedures first? Your admission procedures have been completed a long time ago. Wang Yanran glanced at him with disgust. You don't think that I, a professor and dean, will go through the procedures for you personally, do you? I just asked him to bring Lu Wanyi here. Who knew this guy would have the wrong idea and actually bring you here too? Wang Yanran had a gloomy look on her face. Looking at her, she seemed to think that Lu Zhaoqi standing here was a bit of an eyesore. Lu Zhaoqi. Seeing that he had nothing to say, Wang Yanran snorted, and then affectionately pulled Lu Wanyi into the room. Xiao Wanyi, come with me, and I will help you check it out. By the way, family members of patients are not allowed to enter. She turned back and glanced at Lu Zhaoqi with contempt, raised her head, swung her twin ponytails, and led her sister into the room inside. Bang! Very loud. The door is closed. Lu Zhaoqi. He looked confused and felt as if he was being targeted by a certain woman named Wang. What happened to this little king? Did you take the wrong medicine? Why are you talking to yourself with a gun and a stick? In fact, Wang Yanran's play was not sudden. She was taking it out on her best friend. Wang Yanran learned from Zhao Xueqing's vague words that Lu Zhaoqi and Zhao Xueqing were not officially together yet. What's even more annoying is that after the college entrance examination, the two actually parted ways. We haven't contacted him once yet. Lu Zhaoqi was either playing the dungeon or accompanying her sister. She really neglected Zhao Xueqing. Just run away after flirting, showing no sense of responsibility. Isn't this a perfect scumbag behavior? Wang Yanran felt the same and was filled with righteous indignation. She made up her mind to teach Lu Zhaoqi a lesson when she meets him again. Huh? Xiao Wanyi, did you eat something good? Why do you feel that your physical condition is much better than before? Full of energy, much stronger than normal people. No, it's my younger brother. He recently taught me a set of gymnastics. I followed him and practiced them, and I think they are very useful. Wang Yanran and Lu Wanyi's mutterings in the room came out through the door, and Lu Zhaoqi, who was very perceptive, heard them roughly. Lu Zhaoqi nodded with relief. As expected, My efforts were not in vain. Massage and immortal cultivation is indeed effective. Wow! Even my figure is much better than before. Can gymnastics have such a powerful effect? Wang Yanran was a little confused. If you say you want to strengthen your body and shape your body, I will accept it. What's the matter with your chest muscles that have quietly increased in size? What kind of gymnastics can have this effect? Feng Jikou doesn't do anything so obvious, does he? Snored. I'm much older at studying, you can't lie to me. This must be due to personal constitution. Lu Wanyi's face turned red and she said something. She can't say it's her brother's fault, right? Ever since he insisted on unblocking his own veins every day, he seemed to have entered a second growth period. Not only his bust, but other parts of his body, including his height, had quietly increased. Hey, this brother's technique is getting better and better. Every time he makes himself numb and soft. It's so embarrassing. Lu Zioki, who was eavesdropping outside, also stiffened and her handsome face turned red. My sister's exquisite and graceful figure appeared in my mind involuntarily. Ahem. Amitba. He quickly sat upright, without squinting or listening, pretending not to know anything. He even whistled to cover up his guilty conscience. After a long time, the door opened. After the examination, Wang Yanran walked out of the room with a surprised look on her face and Lu Wanyi, who was still blushing. She gave Lu Zioki a strange look. Where did you do some aerobics? The effect is quite good. Your sister's physical condition has been maintained. As long as you persist like this, there seems to be no problem even if you don't wake up. Lu Zioki breathed a sigh of relief, with a happy smile on his face, but his eyes became firmer. Of course he won't be satisfied with this. He is bound to win his sister's talent awakening. He wants to help his sister cultivate this fairy, and he also wants to help her get this mythical talent. What his sister lost for him, he must help her get back 100 times or 1,000 times. Seeing the sincere expression on his face, Wang Yanran vaguely guessed what he was thinking, and felt slightly touched in her heart. This guy doesn't really look like an irresponsible scumbag. Could it be that I guessed wrong? But that's not the point. She coughed. Well, tell me about your gymnastics, and I'll help you see if there's anything worth modifying. Don't get me wrong. I'm not coveting your gymnastics, I'm just here to better help little Wanyi. What if she has a problem practicing that thing of yours? Well, see if I believe it or not. Lu Zioki glanced at her, not believing a word she said. But at least he saved my sister's life. As a repaying person, Lu Zioki would never treat his friends badly. He was happy to pretend to be confused and said, my sister has a manual that I drew for her. If you need it, I can also draw a more detailed one for you. The relationship is great, give me a more detailed one. Wang Yanran blurted out, and then she realized it and quickly supplemented, the more detailed the better. To help her take better control.